Yeah. Subscribe to the channel. In the parents' house, where it has not been so crowded for a long time, all the family members gathered. The entire family of Ananovs was to gather under one roof for Christmas. Nadezhda and Sergei had 3 children, a son and 2 daughters. Ivan, the eldest son, who was considered Nadezhda and Aparo from childhood, was older than his sisters for years. The mother gave birth to twins, Polina and Valeria, already over, although they did not plan to have more children with their husbands. It did not happen at their youth, but then after, were to give birth. Only people are ridiculous. She connected the process of the body's operation with the upcoming climax and found out that she was pregnant only during the annual examination, passing the medical commission from work. The term for termination has long passed. Nadia left the gynecologist in a mess. At the family council, it was decided to give birth, although both spouses were shocked that 2 are born at once. So, in a split second, Antonov's family became multifaceted. Ivan quickly grew up, got pregnant early. He always gave great hopes and, of course, justified them when he brilliantly graduated from school with a gold medal and immediately entered the university. It's been many years since then. Ivan quickly got married, lived in a big city, taught in the walls of his alma mater. He doesn't forget about the old men, supports them with money and any kind of help. He visits them twice a year in summer and winter. The girl should be years old. Ivan himself is. His parents are under. Lurko and his husband live in the same town with their parents. Polinka and her son Robert, immediately after marriage, unexpectedly for everyone went to live in Germany years ago. Her wedding with him was so hasty that surprised the whole family, especially considering that the young no one was invited to her there in Germany was born their son Max, who in years grandmother and grandfather saw only in numerous photos that the daughter sent by email or another sister. Lyra was a real bitch. Almost immediately after her sister left. At first, she was married, then she was married, and then, as it was supposed to be in 6 months. Only 5 years after her husband's life with Kirill, God did not give them children. Her parents were happy that they had a full house. Lyra was the owner of a realtor's office. She was always greedy for money, and Kirill completely obeyed her. He was a bitch. He was getting money in comparison with his wife by hiring a private doctor in a local polyclinic. Lyra was very much hoping that he would get out of the hospital. She thought that her husband would become a professor. He was even invited to the USA for scientific work. But after the wedding, he refused to leave the hospital and wanted to stay at home. The dissertation was not finished. Kirill didn't want to take it anymore. From time to time, this man showed firmness of spirit and enviable stubbornness. In general, Valeria always wanted to live behind the bars from the twins. But in her place, there was a home and calm Polina, to the dissatisfaction of her sister. Lyra has always been a favorite of her mother. She allowed her a lot. And Polina, quietly, was a favorite of her father. People lie when they say that there is some connection between twins. Maybe there is, but not between Polia and Lyra. Even in her early childhood, Valeria refused to wear the same dress with her sister, and at a young age she dyed her hair in a different color and short-haired them. However, there was a period when she deliberately dressed the same as Polina and let loose light hair on her shoulders. Both sisters were not different from each other. They were years old at the time. Polina had just graduated from medical school, and Valeria had just graduated from her financial and economic school. They had different interests. So after school, everyone went their own way. During that period, Polina had been meeting Kirill for more than half a year, and then she met him in the hospital, where she had a pre-graduate internship. Kirill studied in the aspirant and worked for 2 years. Lyra did everything to separate them and marry this promising young man, who immediately after the end of medical school worked hard on the dissertation. Valeria has become accustomed to the fact that she always got the best out of everything at first. and her stepsister gave in almost immediately. So then she only had to see Kirill, who did not take Polina in love with her eyes, as Lurko wanted to take him to herself. Not that she loved him very much, no. She just wanted to prove to her sister that she deserves more love and happiness. She then made a fool of the poor guy, pretending to be Polina, and he bought her games. Lurko left, quickly laid Kirill in bed, with full confidence that he had access to his sister's body. And when the deception was revealed, Lyra made naive eyes and looked at him so trustfully. They immediately filled with tears, and the guy became unbearably ashamed. He said, "That's how it is. He took advantage of me. And now you say that you thought that I was not me and the horse was not mine." Kirill was so confused that he easily refused Polina with full confidence that he loves Lyra and always loved only her. Polina, as always, did not argue. She wanted to fight for her happiness with her sister the least. She almost immediately married Robert's classmate, who was her classmate from the TH grade. Robert, unlike Kirill, never confused his sister and always without mistake determined who is who. He even went to medical school in one group with Polina because he always wanted to be close to her. His parents were going to Germany for a military training, but he refused to go. But after they got married, they decided to go to Munich with his parents. It's been 6 years since then. The water has drained a lot, and now the whole family is going to their parents' house for Christmas. Ivan and his wife and year-old daughter arrived in the year of the 3rd of January. Lyra and Kirill arrived on the TH. Polina and Robert and their son were supposed to arrive on the TH closer to evening. Everything was ready for their arrival. The table was long covered, and even the bath was flooded. And again, just like in childhood, Lyra went crazy with disappointment that Polina's arrival was much more fun than her own. She was eagerly watching her husband, afraid to see in his eyes at least a hint that he was also looking forward to his sister's arrival. But no matter how hard she tried, Kirill's face did not express anything. He was sitting in a chair, immersed in his thoughts, indifferent to everything and everything, even his own wife. It was already when they rang the doorbell. The father jumped out of the chair and ran to open his favorite. Anna, the entrance was small. What was there to crowd? And then Polina entered the room, and while Robert was helping her son undress, smiling, she turned to her sister. "Well, hello, let me hug you. Or are you not happy at all?" "Hello, well, happy, of course. I even missed you." "Are you kidding? For 6 years you have not shown your nose at home." Valeria stretched out her mouth and hugged her sister. It was Kirill's turn to say hello to her relative. Robert entered the room, and the excited Maxie literally ran away. He was holding in his hands the toys that his grandmother and grandfather gave him right away. The baby was. Lyra looked at Max with envy, not even trying to approach her nephew, who was a good boy, but reminded everyone of her own childlessness. While Kirill was forced to greet Polina, and the staff was interested in how they flew, Lyra watched them both and at the same time greeted Robert, who from a non-naked guy turned into a handsome man. "Well, hello, classmate. Who could have thought that you would become such a handsome man? Polinka has an eye for A." Nadezhda suggested everyone to go to the sauna, which was already flooded several times. Lyra immediately grabbed Polina by the hand and dragged the couple together. In the front of the sauna, Sepka looked at her undressed sister and stated about herself that the births did not affect her figure at all, and she still looks beautiful. Luri herself also has something to be proud of, even though she did not give birth. It was her idea of a fix. She would be happy to give birth if she could. Made by Lyra in her early youth, an unsuccessful abortion from the first man. Apparently, it affected her childbirth function, but she still did not lose hope of becoming a mother. Kirill was very much waiting for a child at first, but gradually began to lose himself and only limited himself to meaningless phrases, addressing his wife for some reason, the love that quickly went down in the net. Lyra changed lovers like gloves, thinking that it was all about her clumsy husband, who even considered sex with her as a necessary measure. Kirill realized long ago that he was very deceived then, choosing Lyra instead of Polina. The subsequent wedding brought a malignant syndrome from quickly to burned feelings, an impassable feeling of guilt before Paulina. He will never forget her lost face and tears when he blurted out to her that this is how it is in life and it is better to break up now, until it hurts so much. Paulina then did not say a single word, just silently listened to him, and everything seemed to agree. Then, in a love affair, Kirill found out that Lyra was just created for him because she loves him so much, and he loves her so much. After the wedding, Lyra quickly realized that she was not like Paulina at all and was ready to go to the top in achieving her goal. The word I want was always in the first place, and the word take or give was not in the abyss at all. She was very spoiled and unruly, unlike her delicate and gentle sister. Now Kirill understands that she showed him, who was not interested in love games, several betting, and he fell to her feet, thinking that this is proof of love. Everything happened to Paulina in his absence, and she couldn't. She, like him, was inexperienced in these matters, and their closeness was so crumpled that he is still ashamed to remember it. That's why Larry managed to fool him, and he didn't even feel the trick. Ollie was just surprised that the field was so fast and cracked after their first time. Kirill was a little over years old now, and he already feels like a deep, unhappy old man. And he has no one to blame except himself. He destroyed his happiness with his own hands. While the sisters were in the bath, Robert played with their son, and the father and mother-in-law watched them with amazement. Kirill was sitting in a chair and thinking about everything that happened during these 6 years, from the very moment he switched his attention from one sister to another. He was able to look at the smile of the little boy, and the waves of warmth and tenderness rose in him. It was the son of Paul and Robert. If he weren't such a fool, he would be himself in Robert's place. What can we think about now? Apparently, Paulina is happy. They have a wonderful son growing up. Paulina herself is still good and shy. She waved her hand in welcome, thereby making it clear that she does not hold anger and resentment against him. And now she just has to bite her nails with a trap, which she can't even reach. How not to touch the face of Paulina or to get stuck in her light hair, and to inhale their scent. It's good that people can't read other people's thoughts, and a glaring wife doesn't follow him with her. And carried a small plot of land high on the fence. On this plot, Nadezhda broke the garden, and Sergei built a strong bath and put up a gazebo. In the summer, the table was covered in a gazebo or a bathtub, and in the winter, of course, it was a little cold there, so they trapeze either on the veranda or in the living room. There were 2 entrances in the house, one from the entrance and the other from the courtyard. Ivan had long suggested to his parents to buy a large, separately standing house. But the old men didn't want to move out of the house, especially since all the neighbors of the house were friends. For example, many of the residents of the first floor of Ivan's house had the same areas as the first floor. The sisters who had been in the bath for an hour were joined by Nadezhda's mother and Natalia, Ivan's wife. Tatiana, their daughter, didn't recognize any baths and only took a bath or took a shower. The sisters were constantly looking after each other with birch wreaths, as if they were planning to meet Christmas in the bathhouse. Nadezhda and Natalia had been in a bad mood for a long time, and Paulina and Lyra still didn't want to get out. In the bathhouse, Lyra asked her sister how she was living with Robert and whether they were planning to have a second baby. Paulina was carefully answering them and trying to translate the conversation into a more neutral topic. In the end, both sisters left the bathhouse and entered the house. Both of them turned red and looked very similar in the same wavy dresses and with a rag from a towel on wet hair. Robert came to Paulina without a mistake and kissed her, cursing her. With a light pair of girls, I thought you were going to spend the night in the bathhouse. And Lyra asked him with a smile, Are you determining on the smell? My Kirill would not distinguish us. I give my hand to the cut. Kirill even changed her mind. He secretly entertained her in his heart, because he immediately determined who was who. Robert and his brother-in-law Ivan also went to the bathhouse. Kirill refused, feeling headache. In the end, closer to midnight, the whole family sat down at the table. By that time, the grandmother had already put Max's grandson to sleep. Tanya's year-old granddaughter had a dance with her girlfriends, accompanied by parents' warning advice, in time to return to the Christmas Eve. The house was a walk in the park, but the voices of the gathered were heard. Nadezhda and Sergei could not look at their children, with joy for each of them and for their success. Ivan is a professor at the prestigious university. Natalia is his wife. His colleague Lyra is also at the top. Her husband Kirill is a respected doctor. Paul and Robert are also in medicine. They have already passed all the necessary exams in years, and both work as doctors in the Munich Cardio Center. Judging by the views that Robert and Paul exchange from time to time, it is clear that they love each other and are very happy. The table was full of people. Everyone was raising glasses, and were eating healthy toasts. Lyra, who was about to get pregnant, didn't calm down, and now she was asking Robert why they don't have a second child. Don't worry about us. We have everything according to plan. You'd better tell me why you don't give birth to Kirill yourself. Robert answered, What years do we have left? Right, darling? Let's drink to the fact that this year we became parents. She pulled herself through the table to Lyra's husband, holding the glass on the counter. Kirill got tired, looked at his wife, and with one look only gave her an idea that he shouldn't touch her now. Lyra pretended that everything was fine, quickly threw the stack, and went to dig in the old tapes that her father kept with love and memory of their childhood. He tried to capture every moment of his children's life, filming all the kindergarten morning classes and school balls on his camera. And when the daughters began to engage in self-employment, Sergei proudly went to the concerts and recorded the performances of his kids. Lyra was engaged in Latin American dances. Paulina was engaged in vocal circles. Lyra did not want to do the same as her sister, and took it in her bayonet when Polia also wanted to dance. Paulina had to go sing, and the lovely girl was definitely successful. Valeria was digging in the tapes and looking for the very cherished one, where she gets first place in the local competition. She successfully pulled out a familiar cassette and inserted it into a rarity video recorder. And there she is, years old, in a bright suit, dancing samba in pairs with some guy. Lyra was standing on this side of the screen and dancing to the beat, demonstrating to everyone that she is now in the same form as more than years ago. The picture of dancing Lyra quickly changed to the focused face of Polia, who carefully took out the verse by verse, drinking her favorite song. Kirill listened to her, and every line was calling out pain in him, as if this was for him. Then the field was saying these words, and he, the animal, took and trampled her clean soul. He looked at his wife, who suddenly changed in the face when the sister appeared on the screen. She wanted to be the only and unique, but had to divide the attention of the audience into two. However, as always, Kirill read her as an open book. The disappointed Lurko waved another bottle of vodka, while everyone began to comment on how beautifully Polia sings. The father took and recorded both daughters at the bottom of the cassette. He even signed with Love the Year when both girls hit. The fun at the table continued for a long time. Only Kirill did not take part. He briefly watched the field, thinking that his eyes remained invisible to others. But Robert noticed everything, and the anxiety in his eyes only increased. When everyone around was dancing, Max, who had woken up from the bedroom, ran out and began to scream loudly, demanding his mother. Kirill sat closer to him than everyone else. He quickly jumped up to the child in order to calm him down, but Robert overtook him and immediately grabbed his son by the hand. Don't, I'll do it myself. You're only scaring him." Then Max pulled himself to the field, and the three of them went to the bedroom. Killing the sleepy baby, Paulina listened to Robert whispering to her, "What do you think? He didn't suspect. I felt that Max should be left with his parents. Calm down, everything is fine. In the end, my grandchildren also have the right to see. I have many times offered them to pay for the trip. Let them come even if they are completely alone. But Father doesn't like to travel abroad, and Mother doesn't want to leave without him. They don't want to leave this house at all." Robert and Pauline were hugging and looking at their sleeping son. Then they both quietly went out to the living room, leaving the twinkling nightingale. Father talked to Ivan about the upcoming winter fishing. They both were lovers of ice fishing. Pola helped her to get out of the table, while Lyra was bitterly discussing with Natalia that the real estate will fall in price, and it will be necessary to buy it to sell it and boil it. Kirill Pola was lying in the same chair, tired, covering his eyes. Stan Sulik finally ran to Tanya and heard curses from her mother. Slowly, everyone got up in their rooms and began to prepare for bed. Robert and Paulina went to the bedroom, where their mother had already made them a bed on a wide double-bed bed, next to which there was a baby. The baby was sleeping in the bed. The grandfather, with great love, actually handmade it for his long-awaited arrival of his grandson. And the grandmother sewed a baby bed on a sewing machine. Lyra pulled Kirill by the hand and also called him to sleep. The man spent the night without sleep, listening to the uneven breathing of his wife, who drank a cup and now snored in his sleep, causing him a deafening irritation. When he finally fell asleep, he saw himself and Paulina in the arms of two children in a dream, in one of which it was possible to easily recognize Maxik. They sat under the Christmas tree with their children and celebrated Christmas. The song from the video they watched the day before was the accompaniment to such an idyllic picture of their common life. For the first time in a long time, Kirill smiled in his sleep. Paulina woke up from the fact that Max was not sleeping and playing with her hair. He was already years old, but he looked much younger, maximum years. The woman remembered how yesterday, at the table Lyra was taken care of, she was interested in why their son was so small and thin. It seems that according to all parameters, he should be in the father. Robert was always the highest in the class. Polya was very stressed, but her husband immediately said that the baby was just born months old. Although Max was born, as it should be, exactly 9 months after that one night with Kirill. She really didn't want to remember all this. But can you stop torturing her with thoughts? Especially since Kirill, with his presence alone, made her remember all the pain she went through. It's very difficult to survive betrayal, and double betrayal from two closest people is almost impossible. If it wasn't for Robert, she would have just gone crazy. Pauline's thoughts switched to her husband's, and the wave of love and tenderness filled her soul. It's so good that she married Robert. You can't find another one like that day after day. A loving husband, a caring father. He combined all the best qualities in himself that are inherent in a person. He spent his whole life loving Pauline, and he still managed to make her his wife. Although she agreed rather than despair. As if she explained to her parents and others the birth of her son. She didn't want to abort. Kirill and Lyra could think that she gave birth to a child to keep a stranger's husband by her side. It would be very humiliating to prove that it was her husband and sister who took him away. And why would she need someone who easily changed her for another one, especially for her own sister? He was pitted and mad that he confused them at first, and then realized that he loved Lyra at first and was totally crazy. And his sister didn't even consider it necessary to explain to her, to at least somehow justify herself. She pretended that she didn't notice that Polya loved Kirill. He was initially a trophy for her in the fierce struggle with his sister and in attempts to prove to the whole world that she is on her own, separate from her sister. and just by chance fate gave them the same appearance. But everything is good that ends well. She married Robert, who was intended to marry her from the very beginning, and both were very happy. When Paulina greeted Kirill, nothing moved in her. There were no feelings or thoughts that he was the father of her child. No, Robert was the real father for Max. He was patient and took care of his wife for months of her difficult pregnancy. He was close when she gave birth. He didn't sleep with her when the baby was born. He took care of her as if she were his wife. The boy grew very sick and had enough infections in a row, despite the fact that both parents are doctors. Probably that's why he's so weak now. Robert wanted to leave him at home with his parents, but now he would go crazy, feeling sad and anxious for the baby. Everything will be fine. How long can you hide the child from the family? Kirill lives with Lyra. Let them live together. He has no relationship with Max at all. Of course, he doesn't look as happy as Lyra herself, but these are purely their personal problems. They don't touch me at all. I don't wish them any harm. Let them be happy, since they wanted to be together so much. Paulina thought about all this, stroking her son's curly hair. She didn't know that her grandmother was going to cut him up today, and Max agreed to part with his curls. The parents were very happy that their daughter finally brought them a grandson. However, they arrived not for long, just for a week. On January, they were already flying back to Munich. Robert woke up and hugged his wife. Max lay between them, with both sides protected by chemo covers, and slept soundly. He fell asleep again because his mother stroked his head. Voices came from the next room, which in high tones found something out between themselves. It seems that Lyra is conducting a flight analysis, and Kirill is tired of her attacks. A strange family. With an unarmed look, it is clear that both are unhappy, but persistently continue to pretend that they are a family. Although they could be happy in vain, since the joint life did not work out. Well, yes, God is with them. It does not concern us with the field. Robert thought about himself, thinking the same way as his wife. He decidedly pulled himself to her, trying not to disturb her son, and began to gently kiss her. Paulina was responsible for his touch and kisses, but then Max opened his eyes and began to laugh. This cunning man had long been awake and was trying to cover his eyes all this time. The father began to tickle him, and the child began to laugh even louder. In the next room, there were two people lying, and the child's laughter and the whining of his parents were heard. Kirill smiled at him. Displeased, Lyra noticed that her husband was smiling, said something evil. The hens are wearing their Max's bag like a shit bag. Even disgusting. Be jealous, be silent. By the way, Max is your nephew, and you never hugged him and gave him our present. I put him under the tree. Let him look for it. There's nothing to be proud of. Why be jealous? It's not a tricky thing to give birth to. Well, apparently not that tricky, since you haven't given birth yet. You don't want to examine yourself. You think everything is fine with you. Of course it's fine. It's all up to you, I'm sure. Everything is fine with me too, I checked. You checked, but you didn't warn me about it? Why? I'm a doctor myself. Have you forgotten? So they had a fight in the morning, and it was a common thing for their family to start the day of clarifying their relationship. Kirill was so tired of it. If he was asked, he wouldn't be able to explain why he's still with Lyra. Why won't he leave? It's as if he came up with a punishment for his bad actions, for loving him sincerely and giving himself away. As if Kirill was self-examining and repenting of his sin. He thought he deserved a family life. Get it and sign it. When Kirill and Lyra finally got up, the grandmother was already cutting Max's hair. And he sat patiently wrapped in a sheet while the grandmother was driving his curly hair by the car. And then with a hairdryer, she blew her hair off her face. With the haircut, Max seemed to have grown up immediately. Then he came up to the mirror and curled his face. Having met in the mirror with a child's gaze, Kirill waved at him. Lyra was irritated and stepped over her hair while her mother was rubbing her nose and licking her daughter so that she wouldn't go there. Her daughter replied that nowadays children are usually taken to the salon for these purposes, or at the very end, to the hairdresser. Maxic's parents left for shopping together, and when they returned, they walked around the room, running their short-haired child. They had to accept this fact and make up with the new look of their son. The situation in the parents' house of the Anna family has become more and more tense. Robert still expressed his dissatisfaction with his daughter-in-law about his son's haircut. Since it's getting worse, I bit my lip. I sincerely did not understand why Max's parents did not like his haircut. I wanted it to be better. I thought you probably never had a child so overgrown. He's a boy, not a girl. Why do you wash his hair? Mom, I remember you. You didn't stop me from being a girl. You cut me like a boy. I remembered Paulina. Of course, Mom is now to blame for everything. Pedicules were in the garden, so I cut you. Yes, but Lurka managed to avoid this fate for some reason. Although we both went to the garden, and we both had long hair. I remember well how then she begged me not to cut so short. There was nothing to say about this hope. She did a lot of things for girls when she was a child, which she might be ashamed of now. Her mother always loved Lyra more, although she never admitted it to anyone, even herself. Old or young, she will only admit it in her mistakes. Crumpet and sat in a corner for a long time with a displeased look. And the grandmother soon forgot about all her insults, with a million eyes on him with delight. With her own willful actions, Nadezhda wanted to show her involvement in the life of the baby. She also has the right to a voice, to decide something in his destiny. Well, at least such a little thing as a haircut. Paulina and Robert did not get stuck in the conflict. In the end, at Christmas, they came for the first time in 6 years. Who knows when they will come again? The door was continuously ringing. The children with the cuffs were sleeping in the entrance. They were thrown candies and other hostesses. The grandmother was tired of Max's, sending them to sleep. But Robert looked at her so expressively, and she immediately became silent. By lunchtime, the whole family gathered again at the table, baked a Christmas goose, and continued to celebrate. Then Lyra suddenly remembered that Robert played the guitar and sang well at school. She took out her father's upset guitar and gave it to her sister's husband. "Come on, my dear classmate, take it in cooperation. Come on, sing us something. Or have you already forgotten what it is in your marriage?" "Well, why not? My wife gave me a guitar for my last birthday. I often sing serenades to her at night." Robert tuned the guitar, and then he sang. Everyone was sitting and listening to him singing a song, and their eyes didn't close with Paulina because the song was about them too, as if by order. And Lyra didn't get a jealous look from this couple. Her mood was hopelessly ruined. And Kirill didn't smile to watch how Robert and Paulina look in love with each other. They hurried home and told her that they had to visit Kirill's mother to congratulate her on her birthday. On the way to her in-laws, the couple who once had a big fight, Lurka didn't change her mind because she kept asking about the reasons for their lack of children, which didn't make the weather clear in their house either. So she didn't want to visit her mother's husband and congratulate her on her birthday. Kirill was tired of listening to his family's story, and when he drove into the city, he stopped the car near the nearest bus stop. He left and opened the door to the front passenger seat where his wife was sitting. Lyra resisted with all her might, but her husband forcefully pulled her out of the car to calm the spectators who were standing and waiting for the bus. Then Kirill ran home to his mother, and, angry as 1,000 lines, Lurka called her next lover. After minutes, he took her from the hotel, where she gladly gave him the unquestionable task of betraying her even more magnificent husband. In the parents' house, it was cozy and calm. It was the quiet haven of Kirill. Here he always felt good, which could not be said about his own house, where his wife ruled the ball. He only needed to work on January th. He was forced to work at night, so his son decided to spend these 2 days with his mother. She often missed her husband a year ago. Kirill was their only son and did not hurry to have a child despite all mother's requests. Nina Vasilyevna felt a great need in her grandchildren. But while her son lives with Lyra, it seems she will never wait for them. When Kirill came, she was very happy. They talked for a long time, remembering his childhood and youthful dreams, which he never managed to realize. Kirill went to sleep, and his mother got a family album, and with a sigh she looked at the photos of his little son, starting from his childhood. She decided not to put the album away and continued watching it the next day, but already with Kirill. She remembered this only on January, when it was time for him to leave for his shift. But he was still sitting patiently next to his mother, and she was slowly scrolling through the pages, watching the sad comments about the past. When she scrolled through the next page, Kirill looked at himself, and his gaze was on a year-old's photo. And from this photo, he was looking at the smiling son of Paul and Robert, an exact copy of himself. In this photo, Kirill was also short-haired, just like Max. He had a short breath. He hurriedly took out the photo and asked his mother to take it to his memory. Then he immediately jumped up, kissed his mother on the goodbye, and got ready to go to work. He was running along the road and kept thinking that maybe Max is his son. It can't be that there was such an amazing similarity between them by accident. Kirill decided to go back to his mother-in-law's house in the morning to directly ask Polina a question and show her his photo. I wonder what she will tell him about it. He resisted the violence until the morning. It's good that the shift went smoothly and no one was brought in for the whole night. Kirill got into his car and ran to his father-in-law's house. He looked at his phone, which he put on silent since last night, because he was constantly called by Khmelnaya Lyra and threatened to get divorced. She was crying in the phone because he agreed to break up with her after years of marriage. Lyra was not ready to change her life. The status of a married lady did not prevent her from having lovers of all ages. Therefore, these changes were not for her. Another fool who will be patient to wear her unbearable character. It will be difficult to find Lyra. And she got used to her husband. Even in her own way, she loved him. He was a habit of a rag, comfortable dear. She could wipe her shoes and cry in it when it was bad. Kirill crossed the distance half an hour earlier than usual. He broke into the house and found only Tanya, daughter of Ivan and Natasha, there. On his reasonable question, "Where did everyone go?" she just shook her shoulders and answered that Robert and Paul exchanged tickets and decided to leave 2 days earlier. The rest went to the airport to see them off, and Tanya went to the farm. They had already flown up, so they will be back soon. Dad and Mom went in their car, Grandpa and Grandma in their car. "Come on in, Uncle Kirill. Pour some tea. Grandma baked a pie." Disgraced Kirill went into the kitchen and sat down at the table. And then suddenly he jumped up and climbed into the garbage can, which shone with purity, because the garbage was taken out before leaving the house. The surprised Tanya watched the strange uncle's hair. "Where? What where? Where is Max's hair? How should I know?" "Well, they probably threw it away. Although no, grandmother usually does not throw such things away. She put mine in the envelope and left it from memory." "Surely Max's hair also got the same fate," Tatiana replied with a laugh. "Why you need them, Uncle Kirill?" "For collection. I collect herbarium from hair. Such things." Tanya went into a secret place and, with a little help, pulled out 2 envelopes from the old grandmother's bag, one of which had already turned yellow from time. It contained her own locks, but they apparently did not interest Uncle Kirill. Another envelope was a napkin, and it contained Max's hair. The man took this envelope out of her hands and rushed to the exit. I was amazed by this turn of events of Tanya. Only I was left to twist my finger at the whisk and shout to Kirill after. "Goodbye, Uncle Kirill. Come in if you want. Soon in our Univermag there will be a sale of a new collection of hair." But Kirill has not heard of this. And Tatiana, as it usually happens, only in her youth, quickly forgot about it and therefore did not say anything to the parents and grandparents who returned soon. Kirill called his friend and agreed to meet him. He was doing DNA testing. His friend didn't ask any questions. He's been used to such things in his work for a long time, and helping an old friend was a sacred thing for him. He took a sample of his DNA and a convert with Max's biomaterial and gave them to work. That's it, Kirill. Now you just have to wait. The answer will be ready in a couple of weeks. It's been so long, and you can't speed up the process. I'm grateful. You know it. You've already paid everything off. So be patient and wait for the others to wait. Well, I'll try to speed up the process, but I don't promise anything. Thank you, friend. You can't even imagine how important it is to me. I can imagine very well. I've been working here for more than a year. This is a matter of life and death for everyone. Meanwhile, Paulina and Robert and their son landed safely at the transit airport. Robert only then breathed out easily. He stood by the exit and the field listened to him. They spent a little more than 3 days at their parents' house, and the daughter herself managed to get tired of it because she spent all this time in great stress. It's good that Lyra and Kirill left earlier, but Robert still insisted on exchanging tickets. They still had enough time before the plane leaving for Munich, and the spouses took advantage of it by walking nearby the airport. They finally flew away to Munich, and now I completely calmed down from the 3 waves of the last days, which were only reminded of Max's haircut. Robert patted the happy boy on the head and gently kissed the cut-off crown. Next to him was their beloved wife and son, which means that everything in his life is good, just as it should be. Time went by so slowly. Kirill couldn't wait that long. He wanted to make sure that Max was his son. His own year-old photo confirmed this with undeniable straightforwardness. Kirill knew that Paulina could have given Max birth from him, because they were very close. He remembered all the circumstances of this strange, hasty marriage between Robert and Pauline, when the sister and mother with the father were not even invited to the celebration. They, of course, motivated this by the fact that they had too little time left before leaving for Germany, so they had to hurry with the marriage. But the law does not depend on the fact that someone may be late for the PMSG to another country. When they submit a statement, the young person is given a minimum of a month to think about it. And only if they are pregnant, the brides go to concessions and allow the period of the marriage to be as short as possible. This only meant that Paulina was already married and pregnant. Did she fool around with them both and sleep with Robert at the same time? No. Polio was not such a person. Even from him, the clumsy fool, it was not hidden that he was Paulina's first. She really loved him back then and couldn't even try to sit on 2 chairs. It was rather her sister who was from the same category of girls, who didn't do anything wrong in their actions. Kirill returned home, where Lyra had been waiting for him for a long time. She was glad that he decided to come back, and she already put on a mask of innocence to show her husband that she was very offended. But he just walked by, not even looking at her. He got a big suitcase from the entrance and started throwing his things there. And the noisy Lyra came up to her husband and watched all his actions. Then she tried to hug him, lovingly saying, "Well, honey, I was joking then. I don't want you to leave. This is your home. You joked, and I'm not joking. I'm very tired. It's been a long time since I've done this, and I've been waiting for something, hoping for a miracle, or for something else. Kirill, I'm begging you, don't leave. Let's talk about everything. I promise you that now everything will be different. We won't have it anymore, because I don't want it. I don't want it for a long time." And Lyra was hoping that she could turn back time. It's not too late to save their marriage. You can still change for the better. What's wrong, darling? Look at me. I'm still the same Lyra you once loved. Do you remember how we loved each other? Remember our crazy nights? No one can give you such pleasure. Only I can do it. I didn't love you then or later. Don't lie to yourself. You won't run away from yourself. You knew I loved Polia. Always only her alone. I love her now. Oh well. Did this saint promise you something and you behaved? She never leaves her Robert. He eats from her hand. Well, you're a fool. You don't compare your sister with yourself. She didn't promise me anything. I didn't even have time to say a few words to her. You didn't even look me in the eye. My God, you've turned yourself into a landilon. Yes, like you, on a market day, the price is a penny, and then for a whole bunch. That's great. So you won't break the comedy and claim that you love me and can't live without me. Go to your mommy. I won't cry. I have men that are dirty. Just rub it with your finger. Anyone will come. I know that. Don't think that your trip to the left is a big news for me. I don't care. I don't care now, as always. I don't feel anything for you. Nothing at all. I'm just indifferent. So stay in this mud of men. You are the only queen in it. Betrayer? You are the same traitor as everyone else. It's good that we don't have children. You didn't deserve a child. You have no idea how I agree with you now. It's so good that I don't have a child from you. Thank you for showing your wisdom here. And now I can be free from you. Just be happy. Kirill pushed Lyra off the road and crossed the threshold of the house, which once was his too. Now he had something to live for. He has as if wings have grown since he felt that he is not alone in this world. And he has his particle, his son, his flesh and blood. Lyra left him a heavy statuette, but it, without reaching it, broke into many fragments as a symbol of her failed life and the marriage that was finally destroyed. The whole evening she tried to reach out to at least one of her numerous fans, but it didn't work. Everyone was either busy or outside the access zone. After reaching out to the next client, she started the conversation with the same phrase. Hello, darling. Come celebrate my divorce with him. Yes, I finally dropped this unnecessary ballast. I don't need it at all. You were right when you advised. What? You can't talk? Your wife is next to you? Well, then I want to hell, you bitch. She drank to the bone and fell on the bed. What was it? Right with a bottle of champagne, which she barely opened to drink for her divorce. Lyra fell asleep, and on her swollen face, teared from tears, was written despair and fear of the coming loneliness. She was afraid of her. Lyra was always afraid to be alone, so now she was asleep, and she had a dream of a dream from the real event of her distant childhood, when she decided to hide from her sister in the storage room, and everyone went to visit her without her, thinking that she ran away before everyone. She jumped out of her shelter too late and found that she was locked up. How she then cried and fought in hysterics until finally they came for her. When the key began to turn in the door, the first person to see Lyra was Polia's sister. She consoled Lyra and cried with her, and no one went to visit her. Polina then remained with her in solidarity, and the parents, looking at them, also stayed at home. But now she is a big girl, and Polia lives very far away, and will not come to her for help like it was before. It was the third day when Kirill moved to his mother's house. During this time, Lyra called him several times and checked if he had thought of returning to her. She talked to him in a good way and went to the threat. Then she started crying and begging her to forgive her. Lurko got her unloved sister-in-law by her phone calls. She was always talking about her health, and so annoying that Nina Vasilievna began to be afraid to come to her phone as soon as the name of her daughter-in-law was displayed on the screen. She was incredibly happy that her son finally found the strength to leave this world as a despicable person. In conversations with her friends, she only called her daughter-in-law that way. How could it be otherwise if Lyra showed her true self almost immediately from the first days? In 6 years of marriage with Kirill, she appeared in her husband's parents' house just a few times. After the first meeting with her parents, then only the future husband, Lyra immediately realized that they are people of modest merit. This is why the bride began to turn her nose away from their company. The last time Lyra came after the death of her father-in-law, she was very persistent and with a very strong voice. She offered Nina Vasilievna to rewrite her 3-room apartment on Kirill, in return for clean air and a wonderful house kilometers from their town. She said, "We are talking about you, Mom. You need the village air. And in fact, doesn't it matter where your mom dies?" She then took the bullet and flew out of the house of her in-laws, who also put a finger in the mouth. "If I die, then my house and Kirill will get it. And now get out of here, so that your spirit is not here." Nina Vasilievna was screaming after her daughter-in-law. Kirill, having learned about this for a long time, apologized to his wife. He was very ashamed. He neither with sleep nor spirit knew that Lyra had a view of her mother's apartment. This gap in their desire to earn more was not stifled by anything. A lot of dark business. The owner of the rail company was turning with the property of lonely old men, cheating by evicting them on a trip to the far village in exchange for a city residential area. Lurko has already been cursed by so many people that it was not clear how she was even carried by the earth. Since then, no other than as a scoundrel or empty-hearted, Nina Vasilievna didn't call her daughter-in-law. They haven't seen each other for the last year. They both had great fun. It's been exactly a week since Kirill visited his friend's clinic. As Nikolai promised, he slightly accelerated the process of establishing the fatherhood. The test results were ready and Kirill was expected. His heart was beating fast when he was going to visit his friend for the cherished envelope. Kirill patiently stretched his hand for the result. Nikolai gave him the envelope and said a lot. "Well, you gave us a task, I'll tell you. Our Sveta, only thanks to my male charm, agreed to go to a meeting and conduct an examination. Now I have to take her to the restaurant. Oh, I'm happily married. Thank you, friend. I will not forget this century. You will send me the bill for the restaurant. I will pay." "Oh, what's wrong? Why didn't Sveta want to take the test?" "Well, that's because usually haircuts for determining fatherhood are not accepted. Say thank you to the hairdresser, and me, of course, that Sveta, digging into your envelope, more carefully found hair suitable for analysis. I'm a doctor, but not a geneticist. I've never been involved in the subtleties of your work. I hope Sveta is as good as smart. You're offending me. I wouldn't go to a restaurant with a crocodile. I would limit myself to a cheburekny. Well, what are you waiting for? Come on, open the envelope. You said yourself that this is a question of life and death." "Thank you, Nikolai, once again, but I'll still look at it at home. You don't mind? I'm your eternal debtor, and don't forget to send the bill." "Come on, you unfinished millionaire. I'll manage without you, especially since our Sveta is just a nymph." Nikolai snickily slapped Kirill on the shoulders. Friends said goodbye and parted. Kirill held the cherished envelope. He just burned his hands. The content could make him both the happiest and the most unhappy person in the world. Deep down, he already considered Max his son. This analysis was needed only as evidence for Paulina and Robert. But in the end, he also has the right to this boy, if everything is confirmed. Kirill shut his mind, and now he was like a fish in it. In the man's head, like in a kaleidoscope, were the rainbow pictures of the future. In them he saw himself surrounded by the field and his son. He thought, of course, that after Pauline tells him that she knows the whole truth, she will definitely want to be with him. What will happen to Robert? He was not concerned at all. In Kirill's imagination, he had to get rid of himself and no longer bother them with his presence. The voice of reason was quieter than water below the grass. Kirill, although he was a reasonable person, now he behaved like a fool. He was going to find out the verdict of the house, but already sitting in the car, he still could not stand it and tore the cherished gray envelope. The paper he took out of him, dancing with dry language in front of Kirill's eyes, said that the DNA of an unknown person, whose material was provided for comparison, coincides with Kirill's DNA by %, which indicates their family. but what was actually required to prove. Kirill carefully put the paper in the envelope with shaking hands. His heart was beating fast, and in his soul, there was a cacophony of fanfare and bravura marches. He wanted to shout out to the whole world that he is Max's father. All the way from the clinic to the very house, Kirill was driving and smiling stupidly. Then he suddenly stopped. And what to do next? He doesn't know either the phone number of Paulina or Robert, nor their home address. He had to take care of it in advance. But he will now have all this information. Lyra will be surprised, but will never provide his data. Father and mother-in-law are also his helpers in this. They are probably already aware of the upcoming divorce of their daughter, although maybe they are not aware. Then Kirill suddenly asked Ivan to call, and he immediately dialed his number. Ivan, hello. How are you there? Yes, we are fine. Lyra, hello. Why not be healthy? And you know what I'm calling? I need Robert's phone number. Do you have it? Oh, that's great. And just in case, give me Polinka's number and address in Munich. Yes, I have a business trip, but I'm not talking to Lyra. I'm preparing a surprise. Yes, all right. Thank you. See you later. It turned out to be a simple guy. Ivan, just like his father-in-law, was not aware that Kirill was taking care of Paulina, which then married him. Polya managed to cope with her fate alone, more precisely, together with Robert. The necessary addresses and phone numbers were easily available to the newly informed dad, and he took it as a good sign. So, the truth is on his side. Finally, having made sure of his fatherhood, Kirill intended to act immediately. Thinking about thanking Lyra for making him a foreign passport 2 years ago, in case of joint trips abroad, Kirill decided to do all the unresolved business to speed up the date of his departure to Munich without any extra wires. At work, he wrote a vacation application, bought tickets for the plane flying to Munich. The return ticket was supposed to be returned in a month, but Kirill was ready to stay there forever. It seemed that he was not worried about what he would live in a foreign country for. The main thing for him was to give himself to his beloved Paulina and son, because they probably already looked into their eyes in a painful expectation. Well, that's what he thought. This not stupid man was in a state of euphoria. Everything seemed to him simple as 2 times 2. He constantly recalled his recent Christmas party, which happened for the first time in 6 years of separation. Kirill was exposed to the analysis of everything. How Paulina looked at him, how he stretched his hand, how he greeted him with intonation. It was clear to him as a day that her feelings for him did not go away. In his fantasies, Paulina still loved only him, and her relationship with Robert was like a euphoria, a forced mask. Kirill also sympathized with his opponent. It will be difficult for Robert to accept his defeat after they reunite with Paul. He still called himself a fool for being so stupid in his time and abandoned pregnant Paul. But now he will definitely fix everything. Everything will be as it should be from the very beginning. Kirill never dared to meet his wife, whose divorce was already a matter of course for him. It remained to make everything on paper, all formalities later. The main thing for him was to let Paulina understand that he knew everything and was very happy that she, at one time, did not get rid of the fruit of their love, which also spoke in favor of Kirill, because his son had to remind Paulina about him all the time. 2 days remained until Kirill's departure to Munich, when he decided to call Paulina. He almost dialed her number and then immediately dropped the phone. He was afraid that everything would go wrong. No, he won't call. It's better to come himself. It remains to wait for 2 days. We must be patient and not to warn about the visit. Meanwhile, Robert had a cat screech in his soul. He felt something, but he didn't understand what it was. He felt awkward with his wife's parents for taking his family away before time. The offended face of his mother-in-law was standing before his eyes. Then Robert remembered Max's haircut again and came to the conclusion that he did everything right. He decided to call Ivan, with whom he had time to make friends. Her brother wanted to take Robert and his father to a winter fishing trip, but the fast departure to Germany hindered their plans. Ivan answered almost immediately. This is something new. Suddenly, both sons-in-law call me almost in a row, one after the other. That's what joint holidays mean. Hello, Robert. How are you there? Kiryuka has already reached you with his business trip. That's why you call me. Inside Robert, as if something broke. I don't understand. What do you mean by business trip? Kirill should come to us? What? I ruined the surprise? Bullshit. Well, yes, he called me a few days ago, asked for your phone number, said he wanted to call or come over. It seems like he needs something at work. You say he's preparing a surprise? Well, what a conversation. Of course, I won't give it out. It's good that you warned me, Vanya. Now I can prepare well. Robert's head was mixed with everything. He was overcome with contradictions and doubts. Did Kirill call Pauline, and she didn't tell me anything? No, it can't be. Pauline never hides anything from me. But she could be scared. What if Kirill threatened her? Indeed, fear has great eyes. Robert decided to throw his stupid thoughts out of his head. Pauline trusted him and knew that she loved him very much. In the evening, Robert was interested in his wife. By the way, did anyone call her from home? No, they didn't. They don't call themselves, you know. We call them ourselves. And you? Did you miss them? Polya, don't be scared. I found out something. I called Ivan today, and your brother told me that Kirill is going to come to us. He says it's a work trip. Pauline's eyes were surrounded by surprise and fear. What kind of a business trip? What do we have to do with it? Do we have a hotel? Robert, something is not clear here. Don't be afraid, darling, don't worry. I know how he will act. If he wants to hurt us, he will remember his so-called business trip for a long time. I promise you that. And that evening, he did not part with the phone. At first, Robert made a deal with his parents that Max would live with them for a few days. Then he called his friend from the immigration service, and they agreed on something for a long time. After this talk, Robert, pleased, approached Paulina and hugged her. Well, that's it. Now let him come, and we will act depending on the goals and tasks set for them. If it's just a normal trip, we'll just politely decline our meeting and get busy. But if Kirill thinks of something bad, he'll regret it. 2 days later, the plane on board which Kirill Andreevich Solomatin was on landed at the international airport of Munich, named after Franz Joseph Strauss. The plane's crew, confident in their walk. He was in a high mood, smiling on his face. His whole appearance said that he was waiting for a lot from his visit to this city of contrasts. 2 days after Robert and Ivan called, Kirill was tired. Polina did not find a place for herself. She was afraid of the unknown, which just drove her crazy. Kirill's supposed visit caused a whole storm of negative emotions in her. What if he really is going to come? What does he need from us? What did he suddenly decide that he can be so easy in our house, even if he was actually sent to Munich? Although what kind of a trip can it be? What nonsense did she think about herself? And also, Polina missed her son. They practically immediately took him out of town to Robert's parents. The old men were desperate for their grandchildren and were happy to spend as much time with them as they wanted. They didn't interfere much in the life of the children. Their life was well organized, although at first it was very difficult to adapt to her reality in a foreign country. Over the 6 years, they of course managed to find their own circle of communication, but mostly their close communication with their son and his family supported them. In addition to the boring waiting of an uninvited guest, Robert and Pauline still had to work every day. And how can you focus on your medical duties and responsibilities if you are shaking from every loud sound? Pauline woke up in fear. She was afraid of Kirill and his unpredictable actions. She was afraid of her son, her husband, and her quiet family happiness. Robert, can we better call Larry? She probably knows what kind of business trip it is. No, Paul, I don't think you should call anyone. I doubt that something good will come out of your conversation. I don't want to say bad things about your sister, but she's Kirill, 2 pairs of boots. Who knows what they might have thought? Wait, don't be afraid of anything. I'm here, and I won't hurt you. Paul's husband calmed her down. That's the only thing that supports me now. Why can't they leave us alone? We don't interfere with anyone's life. Because someone else's happiness is blinding. We shouldn't have gone and teased the geese. That's how I felt it would be. I am sorry, he insisted. I really miss my parents. It's okay. You would have said everything right then. It's impossible to hide from everyone all your life. In any case, our trip has already taken place. But we can handle it. I love you. I love you too. It's good that you're with me. Polina never got mad at Lyra because her sister helped her to get love and happiness near Robert. Who knows how their life would have turned if Kirill stayed with her? Not Lyra. Most likely, he would make her life unbearable. Kirill was from the category of men that they were unrecognized geniuses. That is, they're always bothered by someone or something. Kirill, while still studying medicine, was giving big hopes. But he quickly put a fat cross on his career. He sincerely believed that fame and recognition should literally fall on him, without any effort from his side. But nothing fell like that. He had dropped his dissertation long ago, but he didn't have enough stars at work. Then it seemed to him that the whole thing was in the Lari. She broke his wings with her consumerist attitude towards life, and him in particular. Maybe if she gave birth to a child for him, everything would be different, and the presence of Pauline's son would not tear his roof off. This can only be guessed at now. The day Kirill arrived in Munich, Robert returned home earlier than Pauline. About an hour after that, their apartments rang at the door. When Kirill entered the house, Robert's eyes were not covered as he looked around, apparently in search of Polina and Max. After the duty greetings, Robert politely offered Kirill a drink and a snack. The conversation started at the table. What are the fates in our region? You seem to have not said a word when meeting about your coming to Munich. So it happened. I'll explain everything when Paulina comes. And where is Max? Why do you need Paulina? Tell me everything. I'll tell her if I think it's necessary. We are one family. We don't hide anything from each other. Robert ignored the question about his son. Both men sat opposite each other, and Kirill was happy to show off, giving an understanding that he appreciated the opponent's unwillingness to let him see the field. Usually Kirill drinks a little, preferring to have a clear mind, but now with the order he has gained, he has become so disheveled that he has become self-confident and even insolent. Well, okay, I'll be honest with you, sooner or later you'll find out everything. The thing is that Max is my son, not yours. Although you probably knew about it. Paulina and I loved each other for a long time before you appeared. Of course, I was stupid then. I ruined everything myself. That's why she came out for you, to hide her pregnancy from me. I'm sorry that I'm putting all this on you, but I think that we will all be better. And you. So you decided that if you suddenly thought that Max is from you, then I will immediately give you my place? How are you with your head? Is everything okay? Robert, but be a man. I'm not just saying that. I have proof. You have to understand that you will not command the heart. Of course. I'm sorry that I don't even ask where I'm going with this. But I'm very interested in the fate of your wife. Where are you going to take Lyra to? Or did you decide to present her to me with a great heart? Robert, I beg you. Lyra is the real shit. I don't advise you to get involved with her. So you left Paulina for Lyra's sake, and now you suddenly decided to be stupid when you realized that she was shit. How easy and simple it is for you. You wanted to, you love, then you once fell in love. You drink, don't be shy. Kirill got worse and became more and more unruly, and Robert just sat next to him. He didn't take his eyes off the guest who continued to feel like the owner of the place. After a while, a call was made, and Robert mysteriously threw himself into the phone. You can come now. Then he got up, got dressed, and quickly left. Kirill was so drunk that he didn't even notice it. He woke up when a group of armed people broke into the apartment. He was lifted from the chair, twisted his hands from behind, and thrown to the floor. A sharp German speech sounded around. Robert said something to the tall man in uniform and showed his hand to Kirill, who did not understand what was happening. He was already lifted on his feet and was going to be taken out. Kirill's gaze suddenly fell on Pauline, who also watched what was happening. He was trying to explain something to her, but the field was crumbling from him. The German citizens of the room were brought under the arm and put into the car. Robert thanked his friend, who was tired of doing such a procedure, as soon as he felt the threat from Kirill. The gray envelope said that there was a threat. It contained the results of DNA and Kirill's child photo, from which a precise copy of little Max smiled. Robert eliminated the threat of his happiness in the very outskirts. His first night in Munich, the guest arrived in prison. By morning he woke up. From the conversation with the translator, which was sent specifically for him, Kirill realized that he was accused of illegal entry into someone else's apartment, and in the next hours he would be deported. Before leaving, he had plenty of time to think about how cleverly Robert did it. He didn't even manage to see Max, because his trip was almost over. Kirill was shocked by the insolence of Robert and Pauline. He realized that they were initially preparing for his arrival and took all measures against him. All the time left until the forced departure, Kirill was completely immersed in himself. He realized that he had suffered a fiasco, and he had to say goodbye to his cloudy dreams about a happy family life with Paulina and Max. The fall from heaven to earth was very painful. Kirill felt empty. When Kirill finally got to his hometown, he no longer looked as happy as on the day of his departure. He had a lot of changes. He even looked like a broken dog. His car left his mother at home, but he seemed to have forgotten that he had left his wife and moved to her. He called the taxi driver the address of his apartment and, when he got to the right floor, opened the door with his key. Lyra, who was amazed by such a surprise. She loved him without any conscience and cheated on him. She was calm about the lack of love for her husband. Her husband was very sad about them, but they didn't talk much lately because they were always in a fight. Kirill and Lyra were hugging each other for a long time, and then her husband took her to the bedroom, and for the first time in a long time, she loved her as never before. The quiet and happy Lyra explained to herself such a terrible change that happened to her husband, that he just missed her very much and still loves her, and that the separation went in their favor. She was in the dark about the fact that he came to her straight from Munchen. How could she have been so gentle and affectionate with him if she had known that Robert and Pauline had been harshly taught him and the authorities had expelled Kirill from the country, giving a kick back? But Kirill seemed not to worry about this. He behaved like a loving husband, hugging and kissing his wife, as if it was not him who spent with her for years of unhappy marriage. How little a woman needs for happiness. For this, it is enough for a man to simply let his woman understand that he loves her, once again caress, compliment, that he still loves her and worships. The happy Lyra was in the arms of Kirill. She was ready to spend her whole life with him in bed. But remembering the unspoken truth that you won't be full of one love, she decided to get up and cook a festive dinner. What do you want to cook, dear? You're probably hungry. You can't imagine. Polushka, I think I would eat an elephant now. I would spend so many calories, Lyra answered, and then she went crazy. What did you call me? Repeat. But Kirill, as if she did not hear her, just carefully asked, Paulina, where's Max? Don't you think he's not home for a long time? Come on, get ready for the fusion, and then he will surely come hungry too. Lyra had a cold on her back. She was ready to stand up and usually yell at her husband, but immediately shut up and looked at him carefully. He looked like he was normal, but his behavior and the way he addressed her, and then these questions about Max, were knocked out of the scale. Why not take it all as a game? when she still has the chance to get so much love and attention from her husband. And although the inner voice was telling her that this was not normal, Lyra ordered him to shut up and continued to happily cover the table. Finally, she went into the bedroom to invite her husband to dinner. But the Kirill who had put her in bed an hour ago and looked happy now was completely different. He sat in a chair and, when Kirill relaxed his grip, Lyra immediately jumped out of the building, snarling in his throat. The neighbors called the police, and the father called ambulance because Kirill was sitting and crying quietly, blabbering something about DNA, a lost photo, and his son. After the last 2 weeks of, Lyra quickly filed for divorce because she didn't like living with a madman. Nina Vasilyevna visited her son alone in the clinic. Watching her child selflessly behave, her mother's heart was torn apart from grief. Kirill was mostly quiet. He only once showed his madness, for which he paid by getting into the hospital. The doctor who treated her calmed the woman and said that Kirill is slowly but surely going to recovery. In our age of urbanization and crazy life rhythms, many people experience such mental disorders. Her mother didn't understand what the doctor was trying to explain. In response, she nodded in the hope that this solid, bearded man would help her boy to get over it quickly. Lyra also had a black belt. Following Kirill's sudden illness, serious people became interested in her dark stuff. Then to the city with a check came the prosecutor's office. Not knowing it, Lurko tamed the interest of the old man for whom there was who to stand up, and this someone stood up actively knocking on the sleeve many in the city administration who earlier ate from her hand and fed with supplies from large bars from illegal deals immediately turned away from the impudent Iriel Tarshi, pretending that they were even not familiar with her. The wheel of justice turned, and it was no longer to be stopped. Lyra was thrown into countless. Now the parents were terrified listening to the local news, as their youngest daughter is called the Black Realtor. Ivan, who arrived, wanted to save his sister, but he was immediately understood that her case smells like kerosene. Parents and brother were not easy to deal with the fact that Lyra is accused of such serious crimes. What if Lyra's hands are burned by the blood of innocent old men? Who knows what she could have gotten to? There is no limit to human stupidity and greed, because in her desire to get rich, some people sometimes do terrible things. Mother called on the line and asked her to come, but she stubbornly refused. And how could she help? If Ivan had let go of his hands in dismay, it means that Lyra would not be able to save anything. They were able to send money to the lawyer and were ready to take the parents to their homes. Robert invited them more than once, but they did not want to change their life. After the recent visit to Kirill, Polina did not want to come home at all. After the preliminary court hearing, Lyra was taken into custody. The lawyer promised to make the most of it to save the time for the next punishment. But for Lyra, being in prison was already the first call that she had to prepare for the worst. Fate, as if for a joke, put both spouses in equal conditions. Both were limited in their movements, being in state institutions, although they carried different names and carried out different functions in their own way. The investigation into the case of Valeria Solomatina lasted about 6 months. The lawyer was in the process of tightening the process, trying to keep up with every word of the law. And Lyra continued to sit in the investigation isolation and was already tired of this uncertainty. In the cell, she quickly came to her senses and realized that she had come to a completely different world, where she needed to be able to stand up for herself and, in every convenient case, take her place under the sun. She was able to be tough and cunning. She was beaten. She was responsible for it and persistently refused to surrender. The former prison guards warned her and made her feel that the prison was just a flower. And in the prison cell, she was quickly called to answer for her audacity and even could be put on a pen. But Lurie didn't care. She was reassuring herself that people live in prison too. Her amazing vitality and ability to adapt should have helped her in any way. But the preliminary conclusion drove her crazy, and she wanted at least some certainty. When the lawyer visited her again, without knowing it, he stepped on the sick girl's head, trying to help her as much as possible and ease her further fate. "Valeria Sergeyevna, you should get pregnant. Then it would be perfect. With my presentation, you would have managed to get by on a conditional period." When Lyra cried, he was sincerely confused about what his client could do. But he managed to work out his salary, thus confirming that the Antonov family chose him not for nothing. The sentence was more or less fair, but still not as harsh as some would like. The lawyer knew his business well, and he managed to cut the term almost to the minimum. The investigation revealed all cases of illegal dealings with apartments and found most of the victims. Among them were not only old people, but also just lonely people or alcoholics who lost contact with reality. There were also such people. They had not paid the utility bill for years and accumulated in their apartments mountains of garbage and bottles. Were only happy to get rid of their uncomfortable neighbors and their endless restrooms. Nevertheless, although the eviction of these unfavorable elements outside the city looked like a good deed, it was still made by force and was a violation of their rights. Given the softening circumstances that the accused did not kill anyone, although several old men died themselves. Lurie was only 5 years old, from which she had to spend 2 years in a female colony. She had to spend the rest of her time with good behavior conditions there, but already in the settlement. The lawyer was going to appeal, and Lyra had already calmed down with her fate. When she was trained, she remembered how her mother was crying at court and her father was hiding her eyes. Brother Ivan also came. Lyra behaved impudently, but she had a cat scream in her heart. No one saw the repentance in her eyes, or she hid it well behind a long smile. Or maybe her repentance will come later, or maybe it will not come at all. In any case, the revenge was carried out, although not as harsh as it could be. Kirill's life and her ex-husband's life were also far from perfect. Gradually, he was cured of the ailment. He was discharged from the hospital and lost his job. He lived with his mother for a long time and was a night watchman to keep his eyes on her neck. He spent his free time at work looking for books, so as not to let his black thoughts hold him back again. He was afraid of returning to his illness like a fire, preferring not to leave his body. Little by little, Kirill returned to his former life. He even took his dissertation, and often got stuck in papers or printed something on his computer. He certainly did not hope for her successful protection, rather just wanted to do something useful and familiar. The mother was happy with the changes that were taking place in him, fearing any careless word or action to break the harmony that prevailed in her relationship with her son. But deep down, she waited for his personal life to gradually improve. Nina Vasilyevna still didn't lose hope of becoming a grandmother. She didn't know that her grandson was growing up in faraway Germany because Kirill didn't even care about it. He didn't tease himself with illusions anymore, and he understood that Max couldn't see him as if he was in his own world. It was the fact that you wanted or not, and you had to make up with it. Once in his personal life, there were a lot of changes that he hadn't expected for a long time. Maybe this was the reason for the mother's prayers, and God decided to take pity on him. Or it was just a coincidence. But soon Kirill met a woman who could paint his life and bring bright colors to it with her appearance. That day, Kirill returned home from work, and Vera went to meet him. She worked as an operating nurse in the same hospital where he worked for a long time. He politely greeted Vera, and Vera was happy to see him as a family. She began to ask about his life and being. At first he answered unwillingly, and then he himself did not notice how they entered the cafe and began to talk without being forced. For the first time in a long time, Kirill was comfortable talking to a woman, and she was actually sincerely interested in how he lives and what he is doing now. Vera always liked Kirill, but for a long time he was married. Vera herself was already divorced, raising year-old daughter Masha. She was a little older than Kirill, but that didn't stop them. The closeness of these two was inevitable, especially since they had a lot of common topics to talk about. Later, Kirill introduced Vera to his mother, and she thoughtfully crossed paths with him. But finally, maybe the baby will soon be mine. God forbid. From the conversation with Vera, Nina understood that she didn't mind becoming a mother for the second time. But for this, she had to be fully confident in the reliability of her husband. It is quite a clear and reasonable desire for any healthy woman. And Kirill didn't know what he needed. He decided to just live with Vera for now, and everything will be as it should be. Polina was sentenced to become a mother for the second time. She got pregnant with Robert, and in about months she was supposed to give birth to his daughter. Everything was going according to plan in their family, as Robert used to joke around with Lyra's annoying questions. Polina's parents still decided to go visit them. Her mother felt guilty to her daughter for making a difference between the children. It was not easy for her to admit it, but she still found the strength to take revenge. Nadezhda felt guilty for Lyra's fate. Who knows, maybe if she hadn't been so capricious to her beloved daughter and suddenly pulled back her orders, she would have been at home now and cooked borscht for her husband. And now it was only possible to guess about it. For 3 months, Lyra has been bearing a deserved punishment. She sent letters to her parents. Sometimes she called them as soon as she managed to get the phone. She knew that her sister would become a mother for the second time. However, she did not hurry to congratulate Paulina on this. The theme of motherhood was still unpleasant for Lyra. At first, she was very lacking in Kirill, if you take into account the place where she was now. But her ex-husband was already a stage for her. He didn't try to visit her, and Lyra soon threw all her thoughts about him out. If she were asked why she took her sister's favorite man away at one point, she wouldn't even have anything to say. No one in Anna's family knows that Max is actually Kirill's son. For everyone, his father was Robert, and that was undeniable fact. Sergei and Nadezhda Ananova now often visited their daughter's family in Germany. They met them there well and politely, every time they visited their relatives on their visit. Exactly a year has passed since the whole family celebrated Christmas in the parents' house. 1 year. A lot of it, not enough. For whom? In 1 year you can have time to fall in love, get married, fall in love, divorce, change your job or place of residence, get sick, die. In Ivan's family, the year went well. Both spouses are still working successfully as teachers. Their daughter Tatiana graduated from high school, also entered university. In their family, this has become a good tradition. In Robert and Pauline's family, they still have love and mutual understanding. The difficulties they faced together were the ones that they managed to overcome. They were both strong. Paulina's second pregnancy went smoothly. The three of them are waiting for Katerina to give birth. Max has already prepared his favorite toys to give to his sister when she needs them. He has been strong for a year and has almost recovered. He has caught up with his peers. The upcoming status of the older brother owes him a lot, including being strong and healthy. They have already celebrated Christmas and New Year. Together with Pauline's parents, Ivan's brother and his family came to visit them. This family celebration was not enough for only Lyra and Kirill, because Kirill was no longer part of their family, and Lyra was still punished by being in prison. In prison, she did not suffer much, was on a good list, worked in the library, and took part in artistic activities, where she sang and danced. She, of course, like all others, waited for liberation and missed her parents very much. She was never very close to Paulina's sister. Lyra often competed with her, preferring to be the only one in her kind. Also, the unnoticed and fast as the first one flew by for another year, then more. Lyra had already left the colony and was punished in the settlement. It was almost her will. The only thing she needed to celebrate was the supervision of the authorities, and she could not go where she wanted to go. She wanted to go to her hometown to see her mother and father. Lyra wanted to live a full life and forget everything that had happened to her over the past years. Like a nightmare. But she had to spend 2 more years in the place of the punishment at the settlement. At least she went out of the colony and was no longer behind the bars. She changed her inner and outer. If the two sisters were put together, they could already be distinguished from each other. The dream of Lyra was fulfilled to become an individual. She was still good, but not as young and fresh as before. Her eyes gave out experience and just screamed that their owner had to go through a lot. Her health was not as good as before, although she did not have to experience too many cravings and deprivations. But the daily struggle for her right to life, which was exhausting for the soul, clearly could not be rejuvenated. For men, she was still attractive. They tried to take care of her and offered a joint life. But her heart seemed to be stoned, and her soul did not respond to the pangs of recognition of the locals or visitors of Romeo. But one day, she liked one man. Lately, he was the most frequent visitor to the library where she worked. Most often, he went to their place with a little boy who patiently waited for his dad to pick out the right book. The child was about 3 or 4, but he behaved quietly, as if realizing that it was impossible to be spoiled and noisy here. A man could be given years or a little more. He was always polite and always smiling. Larry was pleased to watch them both, and her heart became warmer just by looking at them. This man must have had a mother-son relationship with his wife. Such men are always with wives. It couldn't be any other way. She would think that this happy married man shouldn't be worried about him, if not for the one case that demonstrated to her that her dreams can still become a reality. One day he came to the library with the child and came up to her. Lyra thought that he needed to help with the choice of literature, and he turned to her with a request that surprised her very much. "Hello, could you please take care of Semyon? The thing is that I need to leave urgently, and I was just going to go to the library, and I got a call. I would leave the boy with the neighbor, but you don't know me at all. Aren't you afraid to leave your son with an unfamiliar woman? My name is Vladislav, and you?" "Lyra, well, now you are an unfamiliar woman. I need to leave urgently. Literally for 2 hours." "Well, okay, leave it if you need to." "And Semyon won't cry?" "He won't. He's a good boy." "And what about the boy's mother? How does it apply to him? I don't want to have a serious argument at my service." "Don't worry, nothing like that will happen. We don't have a mother. She died in the wild." "Sorry, I didn't know." "It's okay. We got used to such questions. For the first time in my life, I wanted to fall through the ground for my impotence." Vladislav left, and she gave the boy pencils and album sheets. About minutes after Vladislav left, Lyra invited the baby to drink tea. He agreed with the readiness. With pleasure, he was making sandwiches and drinking them with sweet tea. The child chatted with his feet and told the kind aunt what toys he had at home. His father was half an hour late and apologized to Lyra for a long time. The library was already closed, and she was going home. Vladislav and Semyon called her to spend time with them. Already at home, sitting in her kitchen, Lyra remembered everything that happened to her in a day. In a conversation with Vladislav, when they did not leave the library, she told that she was in the city, in a settlement. Now she scolded herself for indecency, realizing that he would hardly want to continue his acquaintance with the Zichka. But she was wrong. This did not prevent Vladislav from coming to the library the next day and coming to her again. This time he thanked her and gave her a rose. This continued for some time. Vladislav continued to go to the library with his son and escorted Lyra home. Their relationship developed slowly. Each of them already had their sad past and approached this matter carefully, with small steps. They began to live together not immediately. Only 3 months later, after Lyra was left to watch over Semyon. It was a very fragile happiness, but the woman was not recognized from that moment. Finally, She was able to realize all her maternal instincts, surrounding her son Vladislav with care and attention. It was no longer the same Lyra who was married to Kirill and instilled horns on him. The current one was cherished by her happiness and, unexpectedly, her maternal love. She cared for her men in a proper way, and they were the same. Fortunately, the 2 last years of her life in the settlement passed in the love and agreement. The day of her complete liberation came. Now she was free to go anywhere and whenever she wanted. Of course, she wanted to return to her hometown and let Vladislav and his son go with her. But he refused. Here was buried the mother of Semyon and his parents. And here he would like to meet his old age. They didn't get married to Lyra. They just lived together and were already happy with it. It was with this man that Lyra learned what it is to be happy and to love each other. Semyon has been going for years. He has long called Lyra his mother, and she didn't even imagine her life without them. Well, she also wanted to go home. She often thought that they're still not married. She still wanted to be a legal wife and not just be a housewife. Maybe he doesn't want to call her married at all, but just comfortable to live with her. This also happens. Vladislav, finding out that Lyra wants to leave, locked himself in. He didn't want to lose her at all, but can someone be held in force? Semyon felt the tension between them and thought that he was guilty of something, since Mom and Dad behaved so strangely. One evening he came up to Lyra, who was doing her business in the kitchen, and looked into her eyes. "Mom, don't you love me anymore? What's wrong with you, son? How can I not love you? You are my most dear boy in the world, and you love Dad with all your heart." Their conversation was heard by Vladislav, who had just come out to the kitchen. He also approached Lyra, hugged her, and whispered, "Then do not leave us ever. Marry me so that I can legally forbid you to leave the house." And the grumpy Lyra, who had long waited for these words from Vladislav, did not know how to react to her. She just cried and nodded her head in silence. These women are strange people. They cry all the time, understand when they are good and when they are bad, thought the underage Semyon. He stood next to his parents, hugged them both, realizing that his mother would not go anywhere from them. Lyra and Vladislav were shyly engaged a month later. The 3 of them went on a wedding trip to Lyra's homeland so that they could then return home. This city became a home for Lyra because it was here that she found her female happiness and realized the joy of being a mother. And this is still an important factor in order to become a little different, much better than before. Exactly 5 years later, she returned home in the status of a happy wife and mother. Her parents were waiting for them. The meeting was stormy and joyful. Finally, their long-awaited meeting with their younger daughter, who returned from the prison, with a completely different person, and with her husband and son. Thanks to the case, Lyra was destined to meet Kirill. He walked down the street with a pretty woman in his hand, and they rolled a wheelchair together, in which their little daughter was lying. Nenya Vasilievna still managed to become a grandmother, even though she had to wait for this. Lyra and Vladislav walked towards Kirill and his wife, and Semyon was gradually stepping out between them, holding the hands of his father and mother. Kirill and Lyra's gazes met only for a moment, and they walked past as if they had never been acquainted. Each of them had everything clear without words. It was good for them to have each other without each other. Lyra only took her son's hand tighter and smiled at Vladislav. And Kirill took his eyes off and rolled the wheelchair with priceless load on. Samara's life left all the points above the eye, dividing them into different sides, so that they could find their happiness among the countless number of people, each of whom is looking for their half. It is very important to find your own person in this world. For Pauline, Robert turned out to be like that. She was very lucky that he was with her exactly when she needed it most. For him, Pauline has always been the love of his life. The Garzinger family still lives in Germany. They still love each other, and raise Max's son and daughter Katerina. Who knows how our heroes' lives would have turned out if Kirill had left Lyra, cleaned up,